started my juniors at YC. Under 9s started when I was 6. Played under 9s through to 15s. We didn't have an under 16s side, so I went and played with some mates at Seaford for a year. We won a premiership in under 16s. That was pretty wicked. And then wanted to go back. At that stage, it was Premier Division was supposedly the better comp in the MPNFL, so I wanted to go back and play that level of footy. I went and did a pre-season with YC and did a pre-season with Kringle, and just liked where sort of the Kringle coaches' heads were at, so I ended up playing 18s there. Played my 18s, enjoyed that, and then wanted to try my hand at VFL footy, so I came down to Frankston in 2003. Spent the first 90% of the year in the reserves and played a couple of games back at local, couldn't even get a game in the reserves. So I was pretty lucky to actually sneak on the list. I think there was 3 of us that got in over, I think there was 10 guys going for 3 spots or something like that late in the pre-season. So I was lucky to get on the list, and by the end of the year I'd managed to play a couple of senior games and spent the next 6 years down here. So I finished up in 2009 under Shannon Grant. And obviously went on to play at YC after that. From my time at Frankston, I think people would probably say I'm pretty relaxed. I'm a pretty relaxed footballer. I don't seem to get too upset or too emotional out on the field. I like to think personally that I read the play pretty well, and I think opposition players would probably grant me that too. I base my game around trying to outthink my opponent and get in the right spot better than him. I think that's probably the core of where my game's at. I'm a pretty relaxed thinking footballer. I don't have a super long kick. I've got awkward skills, but I can usually dance my way out of a jam pretty well. So I sell a fair bit of candy in that. I think I've just got believable eyes. Half the time I don't know what I'm doing with it either, but opposition seem to fall for it. That's the sort of footballer I am, I guess. I think it's a hard one. Obviously, I don't have any regrets. I've got 5 premierships. Like you can't have any regrets from that. My only sort of regret from leaving VFL footy was that I never made 100 games. As we can see, there's guys around here with their names on the locker, and I think if I had played another season or 2, I would have managed that. But as I said, I haven't got any regrets. I played in premierships. I left for the right reasons. I left because I wasn't enjoying it. Been lucky to enjoy the last 6 years of footy again. And no regrets. 2 very different coaches. Brett was, they were both hard coaches, but Brett had a certain standard about how he wanted people to be, not only as footballers but as people. He was pretty good at sort of developing you in your character as well, and I think you don't realise it at the time. Like I played here from 18 to sort of 25, and it's only upon reflection you realise the changes they made in you as people. I think Brett was great for that. He obviously had a pretty decent footy brain, but the way he developed people was second to none. Shannon Grant was a bit different. He's a bit more of a flamboyant character, but his footy knowledge was unbelievable. I coached the 18s a few years after I left here, and some of the drills I used purely based on stuff that he taught, and it's still applicable to the way we play footy now. His understanding of the game and his ability to know the outcome of sort of game sense situations was second to none. don't think you ever forget your first senior game, so that's in my mind. I didn't come on the ground till about 25-minute mark of the second quarter, and went to pick up a ball and got run through and busted my nose, and so I didn't even get a touch in the first half. I came out and played a pretty decent second half, but didn't get a touch in the first half, so I'll never forget that. But we were lucky to be pretty successful. I played in a lot of finals, and I suppose one that you never forget, we lost lost a semi by a point, would have put us into a prelim, and I think if we had made it through, we would have been looking pretty good. And that game, it's still etched into my mind. Looking up, we were up by 2 goals, and the time clock said there was 28 minutes gone, and I was thinking, we're home and hosed. Started thinking about next week, and they came out, kicked 2 goals in 2 minutes, and put us to the sword, and that will forever be etched in my mind. But I suppose that's a bit of a low, not a high. But just being involved in those finals games and seeing the way the footy steps up, it's actually quite something to be involved in footy at that level. Having the talent around you just makes playing footy a lot easier when you're playing those sorts of games. Yeah, I think I was pretty lucky. The years I spent here, got some good mates out of it. I struggle to sort of stay in touch these days with family commitments and obviously local commitments, but still sort of speak to guys when I bump into them. David Comben, Itchy Bosworth, stay in touch with Neil Winterton a little bit, but just those sorts of blokes. Obviously Crowley coming back to our league this year, it was nice to sort of bump into him again. Those sorts of blokes, once you've played enough footy with someone at that level and been through sort of not only the on-field stuff but the off-field stuff and all the hard work you do off the field for those games, once you do all that with someone at the sort of level it requires, you develop bonds that you can bump into each other 4 or 5 years down the track, and it's like you haven't missed a moment of time. You make really special friendships, and it's really nice, and that's one of the things I love about footy. It's really nice to have that with other players, but they become lifelong friends, and as I said, it doesn't matter how much time passes, you can still reminisce on the times that you had and still enjoy the times you got ahead. Gee, there's a ton. Just looking around at the lockers, you can see Big Normie Clark. Didn't look much, but gee, you could impact the game. Mickey Ablett, absolute jet. I actually based a lot of the way I sort of developed my game on the way he played. I like to think I do somewhat of a job of what he used to do. Look over Ash Roberts, one of the hardest blokes I've ever played with, just tough as nails and pretty inspirational. He didn't say a real lot, but you listened when he did. And speaking of that sort of person, Johnny Hines, he taught me a lot too. Like, he's one of them guys that doesn't matter whether you're top of the social network or bottom of the social network. He doesn't have an issue with speaking on your level. He can come up and he can speak to sort of a bit more proper, but he can come down and talk with us plebs as well. And he was really, really good at balancing that. He was an unbelievable leader, and also a fair gun on the field as well. Another one I see out there, Bev Malloy. I was lucky to play head coach at Coringal when I was at Coringal, and then when he came back to Frankston, I knew he was all right at Coringal, but I didn't know what he'd be like at this level. Obviously, Jet, he another awesome footballer. We spoke about Winnow already, but Winnow, another card. Like, I'm pretty blessed to play with a lot of footballers. Obviously played with Baggers and Hibbo that have gone on to Essendon. Mark Smugliani's gone on to bigger, better things. Jimmy Magna, Tory Dixon. I've been blessed to play with some of these guys. Like, we were pretty successful down here when I was down here. Azza Edwards, another one. Justin Berry. We could go all night talking about the guys I used to play with and what they can do on a footy field. Unbelievable. You could spend hours talking about it, literally. The thing that probably hits me the most is, well, not only have they rearranged it a little bit, but just the extra equipment they got. It's a little bit more professional, but it's actually, it stirs up that feeling when you come back in the room and you remember what it was about down here, and sort of brings back a few memories of, used to use the gym a fair bit on the off nights, and the laughs you had with the boys, and obviously sitting next to the locker. It's a pretty special place. So it definitely stirs up those sorts of feelings when you come in here. Frankston has pretty passionate supporters, great value, awesome value, and you could clearly hear, like out on the ground, you could clearly hear the distinctive, barracking and distinctive, when they take pot shots at someone, you could actually hear it. I remember playing on Stevie Milne, got dropped down one game out here. I was playing on him, and it was when all the rapist stuff was all going on, and there was quite a large crowd because obviously pretty big name, but it's very clear, like you can actually hear the way they get into them, and especially the Dolly supporters and up on the hill with their music, and they can really, they're good, they're good at mind fucking them. They are. They really get into them. So that side of it's good. I think it's hard to sort of match the passion of some of those guys. They love it. They support us like we're an AFL team, and they sort of put that time and effort in and really make a big effort to get down to every game, and they're very vocal. I've definitely had some hard matchups. Some named players when I was playing down here at Dolly's. Playing at Stevie Milne, 3 quarters, kept him goalless, thought I was flying. He ended up kicking 5 on me in the last, so he showed that he had a little bit of go about him. Stevie Johnson touched me up a little bit, and Stewie Dew, it was a pretty poor matchup for me. Obviously they're all named players. It wasn't the only time I got my ass handed to me, but you win some, you lose some, and I think as far as back at local, I've been touched up a couple of times. But as far as any one opponent that really has consistently, I can't think of an opponent that I've had to face 2 or 3 times where they've gotten the wood on me 2 or 3 times. I like to think that I'm pretty good at responding and coming up with a change of tack to sort of make sure they don't get the wood over me again. I definitely can't think of anyone at local level who's consistently done that to me. And even at VFL level, I can't think of anyone that consistently did it. I think there was those rare occasions or poor matchups. As spent majority of my career as a half backman. I played on tall and small. If I get someone that's obviously too quick for me, I've been moved pretty quick. Or someone that's too tall and strong, I usually get, the coaches are pretty smart. They usually move you off them pretty quick. So in terms of meeting an opponent regularly, and I don't think I've had too many dramas with any named people in particular. No, it's been pretty special. It's been a pretty good group to be a part of, but the core of the success comes in the people involved. I know people talk about money, and I think days of buying success are pretty much shot. You've really got to develop that. Now, we were lucky that YC were, they've got an unbelievable, to start with, they've got an unbelievable committee, they've got great volunteers down at the club, that everything sort of runs pretty well behind the scenes. You've got to have that to start with before you even talk coaches and players. So that's all brilliantly run down there. Great people in that respect. But then, when I talk about, I went there in 2010. Prior to that, YC played a lot of finals footy. They'd been relatively successful, but then, obviously, my uncle was coach, and chatting to him about what they'd developed over the last few years in terms of the culture of the group, and just weeding out people that didn't fit into what they were trying to achieve. And there was a lot of young guys, a lot of talented young guys, but a lot of young guys in the group and a couple of older heads. And they had a pretty decent group of, there was other guys in there, that ex-Frankston footballers, other ex-VFL footballers, and they managed to sort of get all these guys playing together. They managed to recruit Eamesy, myself and Louis Roberts. Anybody that knows Louis Roberts or Eamesy knows they're guns, and they're both still playing at the club. And I think that's the secret, isn't the fact that they recruited guys, it's the fact that we're all still there. And you look at someone like Brad Holmes, he could have gone back to play Mulgrave or Vermont or somewhere up there quite easily, and I think there was times that he probably spoke to the clubs up there and thought about it. But the ability to offer the environment and the culture that YC do is probably what gives them their power over holding on. And it's not holding on to everybody, because we don't. We lost a whole bunch of young guys last year, and they left for their reasons or whatnot, but you got to have some new blood in and some blood out, and we managed to just blood out the ones that sort of were happy to move on in a sense. Like, you still lose your occasional guys that you don't want to lose. Guys go play in a state, or they might go because they got an opportunity to coach somewhere or that, but we just managed to hold on to a lot more players, and that in turn builds that culture. So when you've got the same group there, you've got the same mentality, and you inject a few new people, you still get that newer energy that you need to stay successful and stay hungry, but you manage to keep enough of that leadership to keep that culture about success and what's required to be successful. And I think a lot of other clubs seem to lose too many guys on a regular basis to maintain that successful culture, and it's sort of relied upon too many individuals to do too much work, in terms of not on the field sort of work, but in terms of motivating the whole group to be successful. It's a lot easier at a club when you got sort of 40, 50 guys on a list that are all buying into that goal. And clubs concentrate on getting 22 blokes out on a field when, I know it'd be 10 guys that are shooting for my spot next year at YC, and that's the difference between us and other clubs, is we're holding on to those guys because they want to be part of that. And success breeds success, I suppose. So it's easy to say that 5 years down the track, but a lot of the hard work is done through the juniors, is done behind the scenes, both, as I said before, the committee, but it's done by building upon it little bit by little bit each year. And I mean, the committee's been brilliant in appointing the coaches that they've appointed. Bugs is one of the best people person sort of people that I've met. He was great at getting that side to play together. He took lots of guys from different backgrounds and different areas and got them all to play as mates, and it's a bit like a brotherhood down there at YC. Everyone's that tight. And now the appointment of Scotty Mathers is another brilliant move. He's just so technically minded that he's got this brilliant group that's so tight, he can just build upon the football sense and the football skills of that group. And yeah, I think that's where that success comes from, just building layer upon layer. And YC are so good at it. They're so good at keeping all those layers to build upon. Yeah, it's hard to explain, I suppose. I know my pop coached my Uncle Bugs back at Caulfield. I know that much, but I don't know a real lot of detail about what they sort of did with their careers. But ever since we've been in Frankston, we've been involved with YC as juniors. My dad was president down there. Bugs was always coaching Bundy's team. My brothers both played. They played their juniors. Cousin Adrian played at Mazzanotti, ended up coming across to YC as a senior footballer. And then obviously Bundy and myself both ended up down here. Bugs came down and coached the development side for a couple of years. My old man came down and was president for a couple of years. And now obviously Dad's moved on, he's down at the RSL. I've been involved in footy at the moment, and Bugsy is back at YC and coached 3 flags, and I think he's stepped away from it for a bit. I think he might get back involved with Bundy's got a younger brother playing 16s or 17s next year, so I wouldn't be surprised if he starts to show his face again. But yeah, I think it is a pretty big name, and it's probably, I'm part of it, so I hear the name a lot, but I've been pretty lucky to be involved with a fair bit of success, and yeah, it's a pretty big name in football with our family. As I said, there's cousins and stuff like that, and most of them sort of retired, and it's just me and Bundy left now, and hopefully our boys can follow in the footsteps or go a little bit further than we did. There was no real plan or rhyme or reason with the hair. It was 2010. I had was probably in the best physical shape of my life. I was low body fat, had decent size, a lot bigger than what I am now. So the missus convinced me to shave my head, and I thought I looked pretty tough. So I grew a bit of facial hair, and I got around the first year back at local. I got around with the shaved head and trying to look like a tough guy. No one knew me, so I got away with acting like a hard ass. But I get bored pretty quick and pretty easily, so I had to mix it up, and I decided I wanted to try dreadies. So I planned on growing the hair out to try and get dreadlocks. Thought, well, I may as well try it while I've still got hair. I might be bald one day, so try it while I got hair. So I spent the next, I think it took me about 18 months to grow my hair to dready length. So played the next, so 2010 I was shaved head. 2011 I had a bit longer hair. I decided partway through the 2011 season that I wanted to do the dreadies. That's when I decided. So I started growing my hair out, had a bit of a beard and that. So just mixing it up, had a different look again. And then throughout the 2012 season, I was getting around with my long hair, putting up like a samurai ponytail, and the aim was to get dreadies. I ended up getting dreadlocks and got married with my dreadies. So they're forever pictured up on my wall. And then I realised that they're a lot more maintenance than they look like. So, and I'm not a high maintenance person, I struggle with hair like this. So I got rid of it, shaved my head and started again. Then, because I'd sort of started this little trend, had 3 different haircuts for the grand finals at 2014 final series rolled around, and the boys started getting into me, what are you doing this time? Alright, so I went with sort of a Mr. T look, that sort of mohawk look, something different again. And now I've created that sort of, I don't know what you call it, but I've created it now, and the boys, for about 3 weeks out from our grand final this year, the boys are into me, what are you doing this year? And I was thinking, the whole time, I'm not going to do anything. I've done what I wanted to do. I don't need to do anything. But it started getting in my head, and I'm like, oh, I've got to do something. So this year I went with the speed stripe, but went and got a haircut. I don't pay for haircuts. Well, I haven't. I think I've paid for one haircut in 5 or 6 years, if that, probably longer. And yeah, so I went and paid and got a haircut done for the final. And now, yeah, it's become that thing that I've got to do. So I don't know, if I make the grand final next year, keep your eyes peeled, because there could be something decent going on. But I've got to brainstorm hard for that one. 2012, I coached under 18s at YC, and the plan was for me to take over in 2013. I loved it. Loved coaching the young fellas. It offers you something different than playing does, and it was really rewarding. It was hard work, but it was really rewarding. Takes up a lot of time, and then we had Caden the next year and started our family, and family's growing, and I struggle to find time to make it to training 2 nights a week and on the weekend, let alone worrying about having to make sure blokes are at training and make sure guys are fit and picking a team. And there's so much to coaching, and that's just the playing side of it. That's not even dealing with committees and all of that. The time commitment's huge. I think it's definitely something that I want to do, and I think I've got a lot to offer in terms of my experience and educating, younger footballers and that. But in terms of whether I'll be able to get the time while the kids are young, I don't know. And it's funny, we listen to Crowe on his blast from the past, and he speaks about realising, you've got forever to coach in a sense, and it's true. I'm really enjoying playing, and I'll play as long as the body holds out, because footy's awesome. But as far as coaching goes, it's such a big time commitment. You've got to be available so much more of your time. It's not just Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, plus your gym sessions or whatever you do. You've got to be available all the time. You have to be on call, and you're thinking about it. You have a win, you're thinking about how to replicate that. You have a loss, you're thinking about how to turn that around. It's constantly on your mind. So in terms of balancing that out, and getting it through the missus is another thing too. She hates it, but I'll definitely coach one day. I don't see it being in the short term. I think it'd be really hard with a young family, with the kids at home so young. Once they're a bit older, I think it's another bridge to cross, and possibly then.